When it comes to learning Chinese, what are we actually learning? You may say that you are taking classes in Chinese reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So you are learning the four language skills, which are also the four subjects that are used to assess Chinese proficiency in exams like HSK. When you recall the content of your classes, you may also say that you're learning pronunciation, grammar, and Chinese characters. Very good, we are getting closer to the truth. Let me push a little further. When we're learning pronunciation, grammar, and Chinese characters, what are we actually learning? Don't be impatient. The answer to this question is very important for us. Because when you successfully define your question, you have already solved half of it. I would say the essence of grammar is the method of thinking. So learning Chinese grammar is actually to learn the method of thinking in Chinese. Let me explain what I mean by that. When you hear me ask you a question, your brain has already started to think, hopefully, and the language in your head is most likely your native language. That's why the linguistics says language is a tool for thinking. Because human thinking and language are both linear, the ideas in your head need to be organized step by step according to a set of rules. In language, this rule is grammar. So the most important thing in learning Chinese is to understand and master the way of thinking in Chinese. Pronunciation is a phonetic system of Chinese, and Chinese characters are the writing system of Chinese. They are just two mediums for carrying information. The method to learn them is to understand and memorize the correspondence between information and symbols. Now we know that the starting point of language is the idea you want to express in your mind. Through the organization of grammar and use either the phonetic or writing system, you eventually form sentences to express your idea. That's why single sentence is a starting point for using a language. Now let's take a closer look at the structure of Chinese single sentence. In general, a Chinese single sentence expresses the idea about something, what, and something about it, how. Here, what is a subject of the sentence, and how is a statement about the subject. We give it a name, predicate. So in Chinese, the structure of most single sentences can be divided into two parts, subject plus predicate. For example, in this sentence, 我喜欢学中文. 我 is a subject, and the predicate expresses something about me. 喜欢学中文. Now let's think about the how part of Chinese sentences. Since it's a statement about the subject, so what kind of statements can you make? First, it can be an action, which we use a verb to express. And we give it a name, verb predicate sentences. For example, 我学习中文. It can be an evaluation or description, which we use an adjective to express, and we call it adjective predicate sentences. For example, 今天他很忙. It can also be a statement of fact, which we express by using a noun or noun phrase, and we call this type of sentences as noun predicate sentences. For example, 今天星期五. These are four sentence patterns, are the most fundamental four methods of Chinese thinking. Depending on the idea we want to express, we can choose the appropriate sentence patterns. They are like frameworks that can be filled with specific language materials, which are groups of meanings composed of words or phrases, idioms, etc. Now, let's start by looking at the most common type of sentences in Chinese, which is the verb predicate sentences. This type of sentences is used to express an action or state of the subject. It usually contains a verb or verb phrase to describe the action. So we have subject, verb, and usually an object in this type of sentence. Object is a part that the predicate verb acts on. This type is what we commonly refer to as SVO structure in Chinese sentences. But we need to understand this is only one type of structure among the four basic sentences patterns in Chinese. It is just the most commonly used, so we often summarize Chinese sentences simply as SVO type. Many sentences are not of this type, which can often cause confusion. The verb in this type can be without an object or with one or two objects. For example, 0 object, 他们笑了。1 object, 我买了2本中文书。2 objects, 他教我们中文。Before the subject and object, we can add on some modifying information. We call them attributive. Don't worry about these linguistic terms, they are just their names. Perhaps it's the first time you've heard of them today, but just think of it as making some new friends. As you follow my video, you'll find them appear in the appropriate positions within the Chinese grammar system. So in this sentence, 我的朋友昨天买了2本中文书。朋友 is a subject, 书 is an object, 我的 and 2本中文 are attributives. Now, let's think about verbs. When we express an action, we often need to be specific about when the action occurs and the status of the action, such as whether it's ongoing or completed, which is also referred to as tense in other languages. For example, in English, conjugations are used to indicate tense and mode, etc. But in Chinese characters do not have such morphological changes. So, if you cannot change the Chinese characters themselves and you need to add meanings to the expression, what would you do? The answer is, add the characters. Give the verbs some helper. So, when we need to indicate time, location, manners of action, in Chinese, we put this information before verbs, and we give this information a name, adverbial. After the verb, we add information to indicate the action status, result, evaluation, possibility, and so on, and we call it complements because it serves as a complementary explanation. For example, 我的朋友昨天买了2本中文书。买 is a verb. 昨天 is adverbial, meaning yesterday, indicating the past time. The is a complement, indicating the action happened in the past and completed. The adverbial plus verb plus complement structure looks like a sandwich that makes the verb in the sentence more detailed and specific. Chinese adverbials and complements have a wide range of contents, which is a characteristic that distinguish Chinese from other languages, so you need to pay more attention to them. I'll make another video to explain it in details later. For now, you just need to understand the Chinese accurately expresses actions using this adverbial plus verb plus complement sandwich structure. Now, let's summarize some new phrases we've learned so far. You know the main parts of sentence is a subject. The part describes the subject is called predicate. The parts of predicate verbs act on is called the object. The modifier before the subject or object is called attributive. The modifier before the predicate is called adverbial. The modifier after the predicate is called the complement. So in this sentence now, you can recognize every part of it and understand the whole meaning of it. We give these 6 parts of sentences a name, sentence components. Subject, predicate, object, attributive, adverbial, and complements are the 6 major components of Chinese sentences. You may have noticed that 6 components are actually meaning groups in the sentence, and each sentence combines the meaning groups together to express a meaning. You may wonder, what's the relationship between sentence components and sentence patterns? Well, sentence patterns refer to the entire sentence. However, each sentence pattern is composed of the 6 major components, and their order is relatively fixed. This is also called the word order of Chinese. Therefore, the word order is actually the order of the meaning groups in Chinese sentences. Now, we can take a look at sentence patterns divided into sentence components, like this. 6 sentence components are very important in learning Chinese. Once you have mastered these 6 sentence components and their order, it's like collecting 6 infinity stones, and you will be invincible. Learning Chinese will be easy as a step. You may notice we are using divide and conquer methodology, starting from Chinese single sentence to 4 sentence patterns and dividing them into 6 sentence components. Now we are into lexical level, the vocabulary. Different sentence components are composed of different types of vocabulary. You may have noticed there's a lot of overlapping among these categories, and this classification is just a rough reference. The phenomenon of this overlapping is very common in Chinese, which is also a difficult part to learn. Now, you just need to know, we have some major vocabulary types. At the vocabulary level, nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, numerals, quantifiers, and adverbs can express concrete meanings, so we give them a name, content words. There are 7 common types of content words in Chinese. Another type, we call it function words. Prepositions, conjunctions, particles, onomatopoeia, and interjections only have grammatically meanings and functions. They are the 5 most common type of function words in Chinese. In this way, my dear friends, we have built the Chinese grammar system. We started with the idea in our mind and formed the what plus how idea. We defined the 2 main parts of Chinese sentences as subject plus predicate. And based on different predicates, also the different intended meaning, we can divide Chinese sentences into 4 sentence patterns. These sentence patterns are composed of 6 sentence components arranged in a certain order. Finally, according to the grammatical function in the sentence, we summarize 7 types of content words and 5 types of function words. This process helps us turn an idea into a concrete Chinese sentence. When other people hear or read our sentences, they understand our intended meaning by going through the opposite process, from words to meaning groups, and finally to sentences. This is also the language model in linguistics. I just introduced the most common SVO type of sentence in Chinese. Now, let's take a look at other Chinese sentence patterns. First is adjective predicate sentence. It is used to describe and evaluate the subject. Let's go through the thinking paths we have just summarized. How to answer this question? 这本中文书怎么样? First, we have the idea in our mind. I'm going to give an evaluation of this book. I want to express a positive evaluation. Start the process by choosing the sentence pattern I'm going to use. Since I want to express evaluation, I'm going to use adjective predicate sentence. Then choose the sentence components and accurate vocabulary. In this way, we formed a Chinese sentence. 这本书很好. Congratulations, you are thinking in Chinese now. In Chinese, adjectives can directly act as predicates without the use of 是 or other verbs. Beginners often make mistakes in this type of sentence. You can say sentences like 这本书是好. It's directly translated from this book is good. But Chinese adjective predicates doesn't need to use 是 in this type of sentence. Chinese adjectives act as predicates. If we use standalone adjectives without a verbule, it implies a comparative meaning. If you say 这本书好, it means that this book is good, but other books are not as good. So we need to add an adverbial. We usually use adverb 很, which does not necessarily mean very or extremely here, but it is used to cancel the comparative meaning in the standalone adjective. That's also why in the comparative sentence like 他比别的同学高, we cannot use 他比别的同学很高, because the comparative sentence structure have already includes the comparison, and there is no need to add 很 before the adjective. In Chinese, we also have noun predicate sentence. This type of sentence used to express the subject's identity, attribute, categories, etc. It usually contains a noun or noun phrase. In Chinese, noun can also be used directly as predicates to describe time. 今天星期天. Age. 他今年30岁. Price. 这本书30块. Weather. 今天晴天. There's also no need to use 是 between the subject and the predicate. Noun predicate sentences are more commonly used spoken Chinese and less in formal writing. The last sentence pattern is subject predicate sentence. This is a unique type of sentences in Chinese and is used to describe or make judgments and commonly used spoken Chinese. For example, 他学习努力，工作认真, and 新来的经理年纪不大，但是工作能力很强。Alright, this is the Chinese grammar mind map I've already organized for you. Through this method, we can transfer our idea in mind into concrete Chinese sentences. I hope this video answered your learning questions. This roadmap can be used to guide you through your learning journey and provide you a practical method to organize learning resources and track your progress. There are still many topics and can be further elaborated in Chinese grammar system. If this type of video is helpful to you, please let me know in the comments. And welcome to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget, in the description section of this video, you can find the PDF file of the Chinese grammar system, which you're welcome to download for free. After the whole process of building the Chinese language roadmap we go through, here are 3 points I want to emphasize at the end of this video. First, unlocking your inner voice. Your greatest motivation for learning a language should be to express yourself. And your ultimate learning goal is to improve the accuracy of your expression. So don't be anxious about the gap between yourself and the native speakers. What you need to shorten here is not the distance between you and the native speaker, but the distance between your sentences and your thoughts. Just compare with yourself, not others. Number 2, starting with sentences. A sentence can be said to contain the entire grammar system, reflecting the way of thinking in Chinese. Therefore, don't just memorize a list of single words without using in a meaningful sentence. This does not systematically train your Chinese thinking. From now on, every time you learn a new vocabulary or phrase or idioms, you should look at them systematically in the Chinese grammar system. By training your Chinese thinking as soon as possible, you can learn Chinese much more efficiently. This is a secret to efficient Chinese learning. Lastly, I encourage you to start real-life meaningful learning. Through the above analysis, we can say that expressing yourself in Chinese is a starting point of learning. This is why we need to learn Chinese in real-life meaningful situations. Only in this way, you can maximize your desire to express yourself, which is the inner motivation. You may say that you are learning Chinese in a vacuum environment because you don't live in a Chinese-speaking country or have no Chinese friends. That is why I started this channel. I upload Chinese vlogs every week. I provide you with meaningful Chinese learning materials. In my vlog and social media, you can learn the most authentic Chinese expressions as well as Chinese culture, lifestyle with real-life experience. If this content is helpful to you, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel.